The email arrived at 6:47 a.m., which was considerate. Really? Nothing says 12 years of loyalty like being humiliated before breakfast. My name is Liora Grant. Until that morning, I was the Senior Director of Data Governance at Asterion Data Systems, the woman people called when a bank audit turned ugly, when a risk model started lying, or when an executive needed a miracle and preferred not to understand how it worked. I had built the compliance architecture that kept our clients, our licenses, and our stock price breathing. So when Victor Hale called an all-hands meeting and told me to sit near the front, I thought the promotion was finally happening. Vice President of Enterprise Strategy, the title I had been doing for 3 years while Victor practiced leadership by forwarding my emails with great point typed above them. He stepped onto the stage, smiling like justice had a reservation. "I'm proud to announce," he said, "that my son, Nolan Hale, will be joining the executive team as Vice President of Enterprise Strategy." For a second, nobody clapped. Then the room remembered who signed the paychecks. If you're wondering how Nolan stole my future and froze an $80 million deal like this video, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? His promotion was only the first warning. Nolan was 27, 14 months into the company, and still thought data retention meant keeping old laptops in a closet. But apparently, he had fresh vision, which in corporate language means rich parents and no shame. Victor added that Nolan would lead our $80 million Northbridge deal, while I would support him behind the scenes. Behind the scenes, after 12 years. I had been reduced to a very expensive instruction manual. Nolan found me afterward and grinned. "Don't worry, Liora. I'll lean on you for the technical stuff." I smiled back. Then I opened the Northbridge folder and saw his signed commitment promising a feature we had never validated with my name listed as approval. You know, this story is fictional, constructed with the help of artificial intelligence to make it more vivid and meaningful, but in the end, it carries practical lessons about pride, loyalty, and self-worth. I hope you feel that. Before Nolan became my babysitting assignment, Asterion had been held together by people who knew the difference between ambition and liability for 12 years. I was one of them. When I joined, we had 40 employees, 2 clients, and a data system so fragile that one bad query could make the dashboard blink like a Christmas tree having a nervous breakdown. Victor called it early-stage agility. I called it a lawsuit waiting for coffee. So I built the governance spine, access controls, audit trails, model validation logs, exception reporting, the boring things executives mock until a regulator asks for them by name. In year 3, my framework got us through a banking review with 0 findings. Victor told the board it was because of his culture of accountability. Apparently, accountability looked exactly like my spreadsheet with his signature on top. In year 7, I caught a permissions flaw that could have exposed 180,000 profiles. Victor sent a company-wide email praising leadership vigilance. My name appeared nowhere, which was impressive, considering I had spent 46 hours fixing it while he attended a golf fundraiser. By year 12, I knew the pattern. I solved the problem. Victor translated it into executive language, and the room applauded him for discovering oxygen. Then Nolan arrived with his sneakers and vocabulary full of rented confidence. He called compliance friction. He called risk reviews legacy thinking. Once, he asked whether encrypted data could be made more shareable. I said, "That is called a breach." He laughed like I was adorable furniture. Still, I kept writing the reports, because Northbridge was watching and someone had to keep the building from catching fire. A week after his promotion, Nolan asked for my risk plan, just background. He said, 2 days later, he presented it to the board as the Nolan Hale Strategic Acceleration Framework. My charts, my controls, my warnings, softened into nonsense. The board loved it. Victor clapped first, and on page 1, my name was gone. After Nolan erased my name from my own plan, I should have known the Northbridge deal would become his playground. I didn't expect him to bring matches. Northbridge Federal Credit Union was not a casual client with a procurement team that accepted buzzwords as payment. They managed financial data for 2.4 million members across 6 states. Their compliance checklist was 148 pages long, and every page had the personality of a federal subpoena. If Asterion won, the contract would bring in $80 million over 5 years. Victor was already speaking like the money had cleared. For 9 months, my team and I had prepared the only honest proposal we could defend. We documented what our platform could do, what it could not do yet, and what required validation. Boring, yes. Legal, also yes. Then Nolan added a feature. He called it the Predictive Credit Intervention Engine, because apparently, if a name is long enough, nobody asks whether it exists. The feature promised to flag struggling borrowers before default and recommend automated intervention paths. Useful idea. Dangerous, too. Anything touching credit behavior required bias testing, model explainability, legal review, and 6 months of validation before a client could rely on it. I told him that in a meeting with Victor present. Nolan leaned back. "We can't lead with limitations." "Liora," I said. "They aren't limitations. They're facts." Victor folded his hands, wearing his patient father of the company face. "You're thinking like an operator. Nolan is thinking like a strategist. A strategist just told a regulated financial institution we validated something we haven't tested." Nolan's smile thinned. "That's not what I said." So I opened the document and read his sentence aloud. The room went quiet. Not guilty quiet, inconvenienced quiet. That afternoon, I sent an objection and asked that my name be removed from any client-facing commitment. The next morning, HR emailed me a warning for failing to support strategic leadership initiatives. I printed it, dated it, and added it to the folder. The HR warning was still warm when my calendar pinged mandatory alignment conversation. 10 a.m. Nothing good has ever happened in a room with that title. Victor was already seated when I arrived, hands folded like a disappointed principal. Nolan sat beside him, scrolling his phone with the bored confidence of someone who had never been held responsible by a person without his last name. Marcy from HR smiled at me the way dentists smile before mentioning a root canal. "We're concerned about your tone," she began. My tone validated the document more accurately than the document validated the product. I said. Nolan looked up. "See, this is exactly the defensiveness I mean." Victor sighed. "Liora, nobody questions your intelligence, but leadership requires flexibility in regulated finance. Flexibility has another name," I said. "Evidence tampering. Depending on the font size." Marcy's smile twitched. Nolan's face hardened. Victor pushed a folder toward me. Effective immediately. I was being removed from direct Northbridge communications. My role would become internal advisory support, which sounded nicer than professional gag order. Nolan would handle client strategy, documentation flow, and final messaging. "You're too close to the technical weeds," Victor said. "Nolan can translate the vision." By translate, he meant amputate. Within 48 hours. My red line warnings began disappearing from the proposal. Requires legal validation became structured for rapid deployment. Bias testing incomplete became fairness framework in progress. Not approved for client commitment became pending final executive alignment, which was corporate poetry for "please don't ask a lawyer." I stopped arguing in meetings. That only gave them dialogue to misquote instead. I downloaded version histories, saved calendar invites, archived emails, and wrote follow-up summaries after every conversation, if they wanted me behind the scenes. Fine. I would become the scene's official historian, that Friday evening. While Nolan was sending another polished lie to Northbridge, a message appeared from Dana in legal. "Do not delete anything." It said, "I think they're preparing to make this your fault." I stared at the screen, then saved that message carefully. Dana's message changed the temperature of the room. Even though I was alone in my office, they weren't just ignoring me anymore. They were positioning me. The call from Meridian Risk Intelligence came the following Tuesday. Their CEO, Simone Keller, didn't waste time with flattery. "We've reviewed your public work on audit governance," she said. "We need someone who can build controls that survive lawyers, regulators, and executives with dangerous confidence." I almost laughed. "That last category is growing. We're offering Chief Data Governance Officer," she continued. "Full authority over validation policy, a 58% salary increase, equity, and written veto power over any client-facing data commitment that lacks evidence." Written veto power? I had to sit down. For 12 years. I had been treated like an emergency brake installed for everyone else's safety, then criticized for not being decorative enough. Meridian was offering me the steering wheel. I signed on Friday. Monday morning, I walked into Victor's office and placed my resignation on his desk. He read the first line twice. The color drained slowly from his face, which was impressive, considering I had been told emotions were unprofessional. "This is reckless," he said. "No," I replied. "Reckless is promising Northbridge a feature nobody validated." Nolan was called in within minutes. He tried to look annoyed, but fear kept leaking through. "You can't leave before close," he said. "I can." I said, "I checked." Victor offered a raise, a new title, even a seat in executive meetings. Amazing how quickly I became strategic once I stopped being available. I gave 2 weeks. I documented every handoff, every system dependency, every open risk, and every objection I had already filed. I deleted nothing. I took nothing. I left them exactly what they had ignored. On my last afternoon, Nolan sent a text. "When Northbridge signs, nobody will remember you were here." I looked at it, smiled for the first time all week, and took a screenshot. Then I forwarded it to my attorney, because memory is cheaper than discovery later. 3 weeks after I left Asterion, my new desk at Meridian still looked suspiciously peaceful. No emergency Slack messages, no executive asking whether compliance could be made more customer-friendly. Just quiet, documented work. Naturally, that meant Asterion was preparing a disaster somewhere. It arrived by conference call. Mara Whitcomb, an outside audit advisor for Northbridge, called me before their final presentation. We had worked together years earlier, and she was careful with her words. "Liora, did you approve Asterion's predictive credit feature for client deployment, Nuntrike?" I said. I objected in writing. There was a short pause. Good to know. She did not ask for more, and I did not offer more. Legal boundaries matter, especially when former employers are busy building their own trap. Later that afternoon, Dana from legal sent one sentence from her personal phone. "They are in the room now." I pictured Nolan at the head of the table, wearing his promotion like rented armor. According to Dana, he opened with a line about transparent, responsible, deployment-ready intelligence. If confidence were evidence, he could have cleared federal review with a haircut and a slide deck. Then Mara asked, "Who validated the predictive credit intervention engine?" Nolan answered smoothly. "Our data governance team confirmed readiness before Liora Grant transitioned out." "Elegant, false, predictable," Mara said. "Interesting, because I have an email from Miss Grant stating the opposite. She requested removal of her name from any client-facing commitment." Dana told me the room went silent. Not dramatic silent, expensive silent. Victor tried to rescue it. That was an internal disagreement over phrasing. Mara replied, "Was the feature validated, or was it not?" No one answered quickly enough. By 5 o'clock. Northbridge had paused the signing process. By 6, they requested a full independent audit of version histories, approvals, and risk documentation. Nolan wanted everyone to remember he led the deal. Now they would, especially for a man who thought history could be deleted after lunch so easily. By Monday morning, the phrase paused signing process had spread through Asterion like smoke under a locked door. Nobody said frozen out loud, because frozen sounded expensive, and the Northbridge contract was $80 million of future revenue, already printed in Victor's forecasts. Dana called from a stairwell. I could hear the echo. "Independent auditors are here," she whispered. They asked for everything: version histories, emails, meeting minutes, approval chains. Good, I said. There was a time I would have felt guilty for that. Apparently, growth is discovering you can wish people documentation without wishing them harm. By Wednesday, the audit trail started telling the story Nolan had tried to bury under adjectives. My original Northbridge risk packet contained 23 major warnings. 19 had been removed entirely. 4 had been rewritten with optimism that should require a prescription. Bias testing incomplete became fairness model advancing. Legal validation required became legal pathway identified. Not approved for client commitment became ready for executive positioning. It was almost artistic. If fraud had a marketing department, Victor tried to defend him during the auditor interview. Dana later recited the exchange like courtroom theater. The language was simplified for business clarity. Victor said, the lead auditor asked, was it simplified or was it made inaccurate? Victor chose silence, which was the first accurate statement he had made all quarter. Inside Asterion, panic became company culture. Finance froze hiring. Sales delayed commission payouts. Nolan stopped saying my deal and started saying cross-functional process, which was adorable, because nothing says leadership like sharing blame after the explosion. I stayed at Meridian and did my actual job. I did not post. I did not celebrate. I simply read every update Dana could safely share and saved copies of documents I had filed before leaving. Then, Friday, Simone stepped into my office with her phone in hand. Northbridge wants to speak with Meridian, she said. They asked whether you would participate as an independent data governance reviewer. I looked at the message once, then twice. Schedule it, I said. Northbridge's request landed like a match in a room full of leaking gas. By noon the next day, Victor had hired a crisis communications firm, which meant Asterion had officially reached the stage where truth needed professional supervision. Their first move was predictable. A trade newsletter published a quote from an executive source describing me as a former employee with unresolved frustration about internal restructuring. That was elegant corporate translation for bitter woman who kept receipts. Nolan followed with a LinkedIn essay about innovation being slowed by fear-based thinkers. He wrote, some people protect old systems because they cannot imagine new ones. It received 312 likes, mostly from consultants whose job titles sounded like weather conditions. I did not reply. Public arguments are fun until discovery turns them into exhibits. Instead, I called my attorney, Elena Ruiz, by 3 o'clock. She had Asterion's legal department a letter demanding they stop implying I had sabotaged the deal. Attached were my resignation handoff, my written objections, Nolan's text saying nobody would remember me, and the email where I demanded my name be removed from the Northbridge commitment. Elena's final line was beautiful. Ms. Grant welcomes any factual review of the record. Funny how quickly brave executives become careful readers. That evening, Dana contacted me from a number I did not recognize. The board opened a separate investigation, she said. They found Victor was copied on every warning you sent. I closed my eyes. Everyone, all of them, and there's more. The more was worse. Nolan had not merely deleted my risk warnings. He had taken my original governance report, removed the limitations section, and used the remaining controls table to tell Northbridge the feature had passed internal review. My caution had been turned into his certificate. Victor knew. He approved the final package anyway. The next morning, Asterion's board requested emergency access to Nolan's working files. By lunch, they had the version history. By 3, they had the metadata, and by 4, they understood what I had understood for months. Nolan had not misunderstood the truth. He had edited it deliberately. By the time Asterion's board called its emergency meeting, the company had stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding. Misunderstandings do not come with metadata, deleted warnings, and a son of the CEO quietly changing file names at 11:43 p.m. I was not in the room. Of course, I was at Meridian, reviewing validation logs for a client who understood that evidence was cheaper than scandal, but Dana kept me updated afterward. and every sentence sounded like a chair being pulled out from under Victor Hale. The investigators presented the timeline first. My objections, Victor's acknowledgments, Nolan's edits, the final Northbridge package. Then they displayed the version history showing 19 removed warnings and 4 rewritten risks. Apparently, even board members who tolerate nepotism dislike watching $80 million catch fire in high definition. Victor tried to fight. Dana said he stood up and called the investigation an overreaction to procedural language. One board member asked, "Did Ms. Grant warn you the feature was not validated?" Victor said. She raised concerns. Did you understand those concerns? Silence. Then Nolan tried his turn. He said he relied on cross-functional input, which was impressive because cross-functional input had suddenly become the name of the bus he was throwing everyone under. The vote was not close. Victor was asked to resign as CEO by the end of the week. Nolan was removed from all executive duties immediately and reassigned to no department at all, which sounded less like a job and more like a hallway. Then Northbridge delivered the final blow. The $80 million deal would remain frozen indefinitely, and they were opening evaluation talks with alternate vendors. That afternoon, Simone walked into my office at Meridian with an expression I had never seen on her before. "Northbridge wants a replacement proposal," she said. I nodded. "From Meridian, yes." She said, "And they asked for you by name," for a moment. I just stared at her. Then I opened a clean document and started writing carefully. 2 weeks later, I walked into Northbridge's conference room with Meridian's name on the cover page and mine directly beneath it. No footnote, no behind the scenes, no executive son borrowing my spine and calling it strategy. Mara Whitcomb greeted me with a small smile. "Miss Grant, we're ready when you are." So I told them the truth. Our platform could meet their core governance requirements in 90 days. But not every advanced credit intervention feature should launch on day one. Bias testing would take time. Legal review would take time. Model explainability would take time. I did not decorate uncertainty with adjectives. I did not call missing validation an opportunity. I simply showed them the work, the limits, and the path forward. One director leaned back and asked, "You're telling us what you cannot promise?" "Yes," I said, "because that is how you know what I do promise matters." That answer did more than Nolan's entire slideshow. Northbridge approved Meridian for Phase 1 $18 million, with expansion tied to verified milestones. Simone shook my hand afterward and said, "This is why we hired you." Months later, Victor resigned under pressure and sold off shares at a painful discount. Nolan vanished from executive panels and motivational posts. Asterion survived. Barely. But the Hale Dynasty did not. As for me, I saved the signed Northbridge agreement in our project folder. My name was on page 1, right where it belonged, after 12 years of being erased. That felt louder than applause. And you, have you ever worked for years, carried the weight no one else could handle, only to watch someone less qualified take the credit, the title, or the opportunity that should have been yours if you have? Share your story in the comments. I truly want to read it. The hardest battles at work are not always loud. Sometimes, they happen quietly when your name disappears from the report, when your warnings are ignored, when your loyalty is mistaken for weakness. This story reminded me that being overlooked does not mean being powerless. I took away 3 deep lessons from this experience. First, never let a company make you feel guilty for protecting your own value. Loyalty is meaningful only when respect goes both ways. Second, document everything, because truth needs evidence when powerful people try to rewrite it. Third, walking away is not failure. Sometimes, leaving is the moment you finally choose yourself. What about you? Did this story leave you with a lesson of your own? Share it in the comments. I truly want to know what you think. And if this story touched you, please subscribe, like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. By sharing it, you may help someone feel seen, stronger, and less alone. Thank you for being part of this community.
Welcome to Boardroom Revenge Stories. a channel focused on workplace conflict, corporate betrayal, power struggles, and quiet justice. Our stories follow a structured workflow to deliver a consistent, immersive experience. We start by analyzing real discussions on Reddit, Facebook, Quora, and blogs. Next, we craft original scripts using AI tools like ChatGPT. We then use 11 Labs to transform text into high-quality voice and edit everything in CapCut for a smooth, cinematic finish. Thumbnails are designed with Canva, and every video is carefully reviewed before release. These stories go beyond entertainment, revealing how power truly works and how justice quietly unfolds.